We're on the record. This is the videotape deposition of Troy Tidwell being held at 445 Lafayette Street in Marianna, Florida on Thursday, May 21st, 2009. The time is 9:45 a.m. We're hearing the matter of Middleton and others versus the Florida Department of Agriculture and others, being heard in the Circuit Court and in Fort Pinellas County, Florida, case number 0819597 CI19. Counsel, please introduce yourselves and the witness will be sworn.
My name is Tom Masterson. I'm here with co-counsel Mark Buell and Greg Hogue on behalf of the plaintiffs, and we're present with Bryant Middleton, one of the plaintiffs.
This is Davison Dunlap. I am representing both the defendant state departments of Florida, as well as co-counsel for the individual named defendant Troy Tidwell. Along with me is also client representative Scott Wright, as well as Mr. Tidwell's son, Richie Tidwell. In addition, my other fellow co-counsels, which are Frank Bondurant and Matt Fuqua, as well as Kristen Gardner from my law firm.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
Would you state your name for the record, please?
Pardon?
Would you state your name for the record, please?
Troy Tidwell.
I'm sorry, real quick, as a housekeeping matter, Mr. Tidwell is extremely hearing deficient, and so you need to speak very loudly and clearly for him to hear you. And he doesn't wear a hearing aid, unfortunately, so he's hard of hearing. So,
Mr. Tidwell, my name is Tom Masterson. I'm one of the attorneys for the plaintiffs in this action, and I'm be asking you a number of questions here today. Have you ever had your deposition taken before?
No, sir.
Let me see if I can make an agreement with you here to begin with. My goal is to make sure that you understand all my questions and that you're asking the questions that I understand. If you don't hear me, or if my question is not clear to you, please stop me and I'll be happy to rephrase it, all right? What I'm trying to avoid is a situation where somewhere down the road you come back and say, well, I really didn't understand your question and my answer wasn't to the question that you asked. So if there's any doubt, put your hand up and let me know and I'll be glad to rephrase things. Another thing, it's human nature to nod and give nonverbal responses. If you could, please answer my questions audibly so that the court reporter can get everything down clearly. All right? What is your home address?
4473 and a half Putnam Street.
And your date of birth?
12/19/23.
And your occupation?
Retired.
When did you retire?
82.
And what is the extent of your formal education?
11th.
And where did you go to high school?
Malone.
Is that here in Marianna?
North of here, Malone, Florida.
Are you a lifetime resident of this area?
Yes.
From the time you stopped school in the 11th grade, let's go through and talk about the types of jobs that you held. What type of work did you do when you first left school?
Well, in a little town, you didn't have much choice as jobs, and you picked up a job as you could in the fields with the truck drivers, auxiliary field, building runways, and then my next full-time job would be in Gainesville, Florida, which at that time was Florida Farm Colony, and it's been changed to Sunland now.
And what did they do?
What did I do?
What was the business? What kind of business was it?
State.
And what was your job?
Cottage parent.
So you were a cottage parent in Gainesville?
Yes.
And when was that? When did you start that?
41 and 42.
And what were
41 and 42.
And what were your responsibilities as a cottage parent?
Well, as a cottage parent, you got to 30 or more boys to supervise. And, well, you were there with them 8 hours a day, and took them to the dining room for lunch, breakfast, and whatever.
Were you initially hired to be a cottage parent when you went there?
Yes.
And was the facility a reform school similar to the one that was here in Marianna?
No, it was, if you're familiar with Sunland Training Center, that's what it was.
It was for handicapped children?
Yes, and retarded, and some was there because of home circumstances. They were sent there because of separation of parents, and no other choice but at that time to send them there. And so some of the kids that were there were very smart, neat kids, some were not, and you had to, in supervising them, you had to have patience, understanding, if you could read their file, where they were from, that sort of thing. I mean, it helped you to understand their situation.
And you stayed there 2 years?
I went there 16 months is the time I worked there.
And why did you leave?
Because of my mother's health.
And where was your mother living at the time?
In Malone.
And when you left Gainesville and returned to the Malone, Marianna area, what was your next job? What did you next do?
Well, like I said, I mean, auxiliary field, helping, running a packer, dumping trucks. Then I worked, after the few jobs that I had, I was talking to a friend one day, and he said there's a possibility that they might still have an opening at the boys' school. So I came over and checked with the unemployment office, and my first job out there was with Mr. Joe Scott on the campus crew. I was told that shortly there would be an opening in the business office, and that I would get a transfer from the campus crew to the business office. And that's where I worked until 58, when I was appointed supervisor.
Let me interrupt you for just a moment if I could, sir. When you first went to the Marianna Boys Home, what year was it?
43, 10th of May of 43.
And when you first arrived, you were on the campus crew?
Yes.
What does that mean? What is the campus crew?
Kept the campus clean, mowing grass, cleaning the swimming pool, just that was about it.
You would have had no responsibility for overseeing any of the boys that were there at that particular time?
Yes, sir. During the time that I was working, the campus crew, I also had to work in the cottage with the boys a number of days a week. And also, when I was transferred to the business office, I was in charge of issuing supplies, clothing for the boys, and then shortly after that, they opened up a clothing store, barber shop, and a sweet shop called Hobnob. And the Hobnob was for boys who had the privilege of going down at night, and they had little coupons that they could use as money to buy them whatever we had in there, like model airplanes, candy, ice cream, drinks, and stuff like that.
The Hobnob, was that a building that became known later as the ice cream factory?
No,
No.